still more excellent way. If I speak in the tongues of humans and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but I do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable. It keeps no record of wrongs. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends, but as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now, we see only a reflection, as in a mirror, but then we will see face to face. Now I know only in part. Then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love remain. These three, and the greatest of these is love. The word of God for the people of God.
So at his 2005 induction into the Baseball Hall of Fame, the former Chicago Cub player Sam Berg described...
That's his birthday.
Only today. Yeah. He described his devotion to the craft of baseball this way. I was in awe every time I walked onto the field. That's respect. I was taught you never, ever disrespect your opponents or your teammates or your organization or your manager, and you never, ever disrespect your uniform. You make a great play, act like you've done it before, get a big hit, look for the third base coach, and get ready to run the bases. And so he gestured to the Hall of Fame inductees seated around him at the ceremony, and he said, "These guys sitting here did not pave the way for the rest of us so that players could swing for the fences every time up and forget how to move a runner over to third. It's disrespectful to them, to you, and to the game of baseball we all played growing up." And then he continued, and he said, "I didn't play the game right because I saw a reward at the end of the tunnel. I played it right because that's what you're supposed to do. Play it right and play it with respect." In some sense, Sam Berg's speech kind of gives us a picture into something of like this older moral code. The kind of stuff my parents, you'll hear my dad's, people used to be nicer, back in the day when people they respected their elders, It kind of gives this feeling of that older moral code with its inherited traditions of excellence, this moral template to evaluate the people around us. But it wasn't all that long ago. And you asked a question, which tells me you don't think this really is a reality right now. You asked today's question, which started off kind of, I don't really know how to ask this, but it kind of feels like we're getting meaner as a society. Is that true? Are we just growing in meanness? What's happening? What is unraveling there? Because it doesn't really seem like there's any set of principles or expectations, some kind of framework to live by anymore. Is there, you asked, is there a moral obligation for everyone? Is there one kind of common, universal moral foundation that we can base everything on? Because to me, it seems like we're getting much meaner and much more self-absorbed. We don't know really, as Sam Berg said, we don't really know what playing it right even means anymore, or whether or not that even matters to play it right. I was recently talking to an owner of a local restaurant who said that he's had to eject customers out of his restaurant at an unusual rate lately. I know a nurse at a hospital who told me that many on her staff have been leaving the profession because they have more and more patients who have become so abusive to the nursing staff. And it seems like it's snowballing. Are people becoming meaner, less tolerant, less patient? At the far extreme of meanness, hate crimes, we know, rose in 2020 to their highest level in 12 years. And that, although they've gone down slightly, they have not gone down nearly to pre-pandemic. Murder rates have been surging at least until a little more recently, but still much higher. Same with gun sales. And social trust is plummeting. And that's why you asked this question. In 2000, two-thirds of American households gave to charity. In 2018, fewer than half did. That's an 18-year span related to money. The words that define our age reek of peril, like conspiracy and polarization and mass shootings and trauma and finding safe spaces. And we're enmeshed in some sort of emotional and rational and spiritual crisis, and it undergirds our political dysfunction and the general crisis in democracy. Like, what is going on? What is going on? Over the past few years, different people have been trying to name what's going on, right? So there's somebody has something to say about it. So what's really the problem? The real problem with America? Technology, right? Social media is driving us all crazy. So it's the technology story. Or sociology. That's what sociology we've stopped participating in community organizations. People stop going to church. That's what's making the world a much less happy, much less civil place, The demography kind of story. The demographics are changing, right? America, a white kind of dominated nation, is more diverse. A change that has some people in panic, and that's causing some tension. So it must be the shift in demographics. Or the economy story. Somebody wants to tell that story. High levels of economic inequality and insecurity have left us afraid and alienated and pessimistic about everyone else, as if we are all fighting for a piece of a pie, right? And you can agree to some extent with all of these stories. They all have a little bit of truth in them, right? A little bit, something that has contributed to the whole. Sure, social media has bad effects, but it is everywhere around the globe. And the mental health crisis is not everywhere across the globe. Also, the rise in despair and hatred has engulfed a lot of people who are not on social media. They feel angry too. So maybe it's not just that. Economic inequality is real, but it doesn't fully explain this level of social and emotional breakdown. If the sociologists are right, that we're more isolated than ever, but the real question is why then? That doesn't answer that question, just by saying it's a sociology issue. What values lead us to choose lifestyles that make us lonely and miserable? We haven't answered that question. The most important story about why Americans, I believe, the most important story about why Americans are so sad and seem meaner than ever and more alienated than ever, and which is starting to again be spoken into by certain people who, key writers of our time, David Brooks, one of them. I don't know if anybody reads David Brooks. He's kind of become the closest thing we have to a moral theologian in this day. And the real issue is we inhabit a society in which people are no longer trained at all in how to treat one another. We've lost the importance of that, the elevation of that. Our society has become one in which people feel licensed to give their selfishness free rein. And so today I'm going to tell a little bit of a story of that and how it happened, in a little bit of a David Brooksian way, because I think you kind of need to know how we got here. And then maybe get to a point where we answer that question too. We live in a society that is terrible at moral formation. Nobody is teaching us how to be good people. Teaching us a lot of things, but nobody's teaching us how to be good people. Moral formation And I'll give you what does that mean? Moral education. If we were educated in what it meant to be a moral, ethical community, what would it mean? It sounds kind of like moral formation sounds kind of stuffy sounding, but it really is three main things. It's learning, being taught how to restrain our selfishness. There's no one in our society teaching us that. How do we keep our evolutionarily conferred egotism? We are all about ourselves. How do we keep that under control? Nobody's teaching us how to do that anymore. 2, it teaches us kind of the basic social and ethical skills for living and being with people in the world. How do you welcome a neighbor into your community? How do you disagree with someone constructively? And then the third thing, which I think is really fascinating, is moral education helps people find a purpose in life. And we tend to be kind of walking around purposeless, and that also is feeding in, I believe, to this kind of growing meanness. These three things kind of are this pathway toward a meaningful existence. Here's how you can dedicate your life to serving others, to protecting your community or your nation, to loving your neighbor well, all of that. And for the large part in history, America had tons of moral teaching. There was huge periods of time where we excelled to a fault at moral teaching. Benjamin Franklin said this: "Men I find to be the sort of beings very badly constructed, as they are generally more easily provoked than reconciled, more disposed to do mischief to each other than to make reparation, and much more easily deceived than undeceived." If such flawed, self-centered creatures were going to govern ourselves, to be decent neighbors to one another, we're going to need some training. And so for roughly about 150 years after the founding, America was obsessed with moral education. Those three things. We were obsessed by it. In 1788, Noah Webster writes, "The virtues of men are more consequence to society than their abilities." There's a philosopher, John Dewey, in 1909, who wrote, "Every moment of the day we ought to be teaching morality." President of Hamilton Institute, an early school for African Americans, declared, "Character is the main object of education." And so as late as 1951, a commission organized by the National Education Association, one of the main teachers' unions, stated that an unremitting concern for moral and spiritual values continues to be a top priority for education, all the way up to 1951. The moral education programs that defined the cultural landscape, you know them. You probably read pieces of their works, various pieces of work, also in school. But beyond the classroom, beyond the scholarly stuff, you had a host of groups out there, like the YMCA, involved in moral formation, the Sunday school movement that overtook the church, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, the settlement house movement, which brought rich and poor together to serve the marginalized in the community. There was Aldo Leopold's land ethic, which extended our moral concerns to include proper care of the natural world, gave us some of our first framework around creation care. Professional organizations which endorsed ethical codes and unions and workplace associations, all of these. And of course, and then late into the 19th century, many Americans were members of churches. So religious communities, not just churches, synagogues and mosques as well, places where moral teaching is being taught. If you think about those three things that I mentioned, that to restrain your selfishness and to help you relate better with others and to find a purpose for living, there is really no better scripture that gives us this framework than the one that you hear at weddings all the time that was never written for couples for marriage. Let's look at it again. I will show you a more excellent way. That's the last verse in chapter 12. We rarely read that part. But it says, "I will show you a more excellent way." And then here it is. Here's the excellent way. "If I speak in the tongues of humans and angels," if I have eloquent speech, but I do not have love, if I've been taught rhetoric and literature, but do not have love, if I'm not being taught moral formation, if I do not have love, then I'm just a noisy gong in this world. Well, somehow along the way, a little after 1951, there was a shift, a complete shift. Discipline and daily existence, kind of the nitty-gritty ways you showed up in the world, became the way we talked about morality. Dressing formally, even just to go shopping or to a ball game. That's what morality was. Considered the evidence of uprightness in society, proof that you were a person who could be counted on. If you put on the right dress, it was assumed of you you had the right interior. And large consequences came from that. Much of American moral education drew on this ethos expressed by a headmaster of a school in England who wrote in 1930 what it was acceptable at a dance and invaluable in a shipwreck, what you must be wearing as the ship goes down. America's National Institute of Moral Instruction was founded and published based on many of those expectations. But at the core, what moral formation we lost in the process was those two main things that I think, these two main pieces that held society together. And it was this. I might have done this out of two core premises that we lost in this process of it becoming more about what we dress and how we speak than about who we are. We lost that training the heart and body is more important than training the mind. We did a complete flip. Every ounce of our education, the way we viewed college, we lost the complete aspect of training of heart. And then the other thing that we lost is justice and right and wrong not being matters of personal taste, but things that happen within communities. All of our understanding of right and wrong was formed in all of those various communities we were a part of, all those various grounding groups in our world, and we lost that. And so losing these two things, it impacted the civil rights movement and how we moved through that and how we didn't move through it and some of the lasting effects of today. Because we were already giving up the sense that our idea of right and wrong should be formed within communities and should be more important than what somebody can offer to a capitalistic society. Instead of assured progress and wisdom and decency, man faces the ever-present possibility of swift relapse, not merely to animalism, but into such calculated cruelty as no other animal can practice. That was Martin Luther King, speaking about the loss of this moral education. A couple of obvious things happened, right, because of this. All these hierarchies developed that we find abhorrent, right? And all the reasons why, when somebody says the word morality, we literally don't like it. It started to get a nasty, it became a nasty word. Oh, but that's so don't put your moral obligations on me. Don't judge me. Because of dynamics between white superiority and the way black people showed up in the world, right? And because of men and the way women showed up in the world, and because of Christians and the way the Jewish community showed up in the world, because of straight community and the way gay people show up in the world, right? We began to, morality became a nasty word, almost synonymous with judgment. And the emphasis on morality didn't produce perfect people either, right? All those people in those pretty suits turned out to be horrible. Doing horrible things behind the scenes, treating people with, less than you would treat your dog, but putting on their suit and teaching Sunday school on Sunday mornings. And we would never go back to those training methods after that, right? We would never go back to that space where we're teaching people the more excellent way. And so, a culture invested in shaping character helped make people resilient by giving them other things to fill the moral void. Oh, I wonder if you can think of all the other things we have inserted in that moral void. Can you think of them? The crucial pivot happened just after World War II as people wrestled with the horrors of the 20th century. And One group doubled down on moral formation with a kind of greater emphasis. Another group focused a little bit on the authority problem that we have in our midst, but the one thing that really made its impact, was a book that came out in 1952 called The Power of Positive Thinking. Has anybody ever seen that? You might have it on your shelf, and it might be like something that really changed you, really made an impact in your life. But according to its ethos, this book, which became like everybody had it on its bookshelf, morality is not something that we develop in communities. It's nurtured by connecting with our authentic self and finding our true inner voice. If people are naturally good, we don't need moral formation then anymore. We don't need to be taught this stuff. People don't need to be reminded to be good people. If they're naturally good, they'll be good. We just need to let people get in touch with themselves. And so organization after organization after organization got out of the moral teaching business and into the self-awareness business. And it changed the whole way we see morality. By the 1960s, deliberate moral education was like completely gone across. I mean, it happened over 5 years, completely gone based on books like this. The post-war period saw similar change in the college level. At the college level, anything that existed for moral formation, for teaching you to be good, upstanding people of character, was completely taken out of every university. The research ideal supplanted the early humanistic ideal of cultivating the whole student. And so we focused on research instead of the humanities and the big questions and the kind of thinkers, the kind of intellect we needed in these places to be able to answer those big questions. And the big question that the moral teaching always answered, that we stopped ever answering, was what's the meaning of life? How do you live a good life? All of that lost its purpose. If what is good is what is right, what is true is only what the individual chooses to invent then. And then we are outside the traditions of civility, and it's kind of up to us. Over the course of the 20th century, words relating to morality appeared less and less and less frequently in books. By 1967, about 85% said they were strongly motivated to develop a meaningful philosophy of life, but by 2000, only 42% say that they care at all about having any meaning or any purpose to the way they live their life. And when asked, what is the purpose, you think? Being financially well off became the leading life goal. By 2015, 82% of college students said wealth was their aim in life. And so in a culture devoid of teaching you to be good people, generations grew up completely morally inarticulate and self-referential, right? We care about what we want, how we feel. When I read this, I thought this was crazy. A Notre Dame sociologist, a team of researchers asked young adults across the country in 2008 about their moral lives. And one of their findings was that the interviewees had not given the subject of morality a thought at all, ever. And their answer was, well, I've never had to make a decision about what's right or wrong before. Most of us who've noticed this kind of demoralization over time, this lack of love being kind, this lack of love being patient, this lack of, everything that verse gives us, which was a framework for how to live in community together, right? Most of us have seen this kind of decline. It's occurring in this kind of bland moral relativism and this ability to advocate for generally anything now by people who say they are the ones who want to live a life and want to invest in worlds of good around them. It's this a little bit this introduction into you do you and I'll do me kind of thing, which has become kind of a political. It's definitely the thought of part of party politics too. You do you and I'll do me. So long as you don't infringe on me, I won't infringe on you. But when you are raised without ethical structure, that is very fragile then. when you're not raised to see love as kind and love as patient, when you haven't been taught that that's what love looks like, you become internally fragile. And so this you do you and I'll do me doesn't actually hold up. You have no moral compass to give you direction in that, no permanent ideals to which you can swear ultimate allegiance in that. He who has a why to live can bear with almost any how. It's what one psychiatrist said, a Holocaust survivor. Think about that. He who has a why to live can bear without almost any how. But when you don't, you kind of fall apart in the storms of life. When the storms hit, when you receive somebody's anger, when you receive somebody's disapproval, it is a complete crumbling of self. And so sadness and loneliness and self-harm turn into bitterness, and social pain is ultimately a response to a sense of rejection in the world and of being invisible and unheard and disrespected and victimized. It is a defining factor underlying a lot of our recent elections, right? When people feel that their identity is unrecognized, the experience registers in us as injustice because it is. People who have been treated unjustly lash out and seek ways to humiliate those who they believe have humiliated them. Lonely eras are not just sad eras. They are also violent eras, right? In 19th century America, when a lot of lonely young men were crossing the western frontier, one of the things they tended to do was shoot one another. As the saying goes, the pain that is not transformed gets transmitted, right? People grow more callous and defensive and distrustful and hostile, and the pandemic made it worse. But antisocial behavior is still high, even though the lockdown's over. What do we make of that? And now we're caught in this cycle, this ill treatment leading to humiliation and leading to more meanness, and social life becomes more barbaric, online and off. And we fill the vacuum. Here's another statistic I thought was really fascinating. The director of domestic policy studies at the American Enterprise Institute said lonely young people are 7 times more likely to say they are active in politics than young people who aren't lonely. For people who feel disrespected and unseen and alone, politics is a seductive form of social therapy, right? We become so consumed by it. It offers this comprehensible moral landscape for people who have never been trained to be moral people. The line between good and evil runs not down the middle of every human heart in those cases, but between groups, right? Life is a struggle between us and them, and the forces of good, which must be us, and them, the forces of evil. And this tribalism, politics, has become the #1 space filler for the void of moral education in our country. It's what sucked up the void. It loved it. It feasted on it. Politics appears to give people a sense of righteousness, right? A person's moral stature is based, their stature is based not on their conduct, but on their location on a political spectrum, right? Not on their conduct, but how they agree with me. Not on their character, what they can do for me. Not on their conduct or character, but how they can use this world, use its institutions and its people for my benefit. Politics also provides an easy way to feel a sense of purpose, right? Because if one of the 3 main things that a moral education offers is a real sense of why you exist in this world, you don't have to feed the hungry or sit with the widow to be moral. You just have to experience the right political emotion and be sure that I'm on that right side. And everything's gone that way, right? Hasn't it? Everything. I don't know if you've noticed, but it may be enticing because one of the things I love about David Brooks, for those of you who know him, is he writes a lot on this void of moral education, but he says, in this week's article, he says, and don't think you are off the hook, Democrats, because if Trump was yours, you would have loved him too, right? That kind of stuff. He says very openly, saying, you are just as morally, don't try to make yourself better. No. We don't know how to love either, and it's because we've replaced moral formation with party politics. Churches, universities, sports, and pop culture, and healthcare, and every place is like seeping with it. College humanities departments and late night comedy shows. You can't get away from it anymore. Hundreds of thousands of Americans died unnecessarily during a pandemic because people saw a virus through the lens of political struggle, right? We've made everything political. The politics of recognition, of being recognized as to have my meaning placed in a, not who I am, not my character, but in my meaning in life being related to a group, or where this line is drawn between two groups. It's toxic, and is why we're becoming meaner, right? That is why. It's why we're becoming meaner, and it's like we want that to be the solution to our meanness, and it's never going to get us there, right? Never. Let's return to this scripture real fast and be reminded of what's going to get us there. The excellent way. If I have power and understand everything in this world, if I have all that, all the knowledge, but I have not love, I am nothing. Gosh, I feel like parents, this is a lesson in caring more about your kids being good people than whether or not they got a C, right? Let's move to the next part. If I give away all my possessions, if I hand over my body, because, liberals, you can be really good at virtue signaling. So I may boast that I've done it all, but I don't have love. It means nothing. Love is patient, it's kind, it's not envious, it's not boastful or arrogant or rude. When's the last time you've seen people in political spheres not any of these things? It keeps no record of wrongs. No record of wrongs! All we want to do is see the wrongs, right? It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes in the redemption of people, not the cancel of people. It hopes all things, it endures all things, right? To sum this up, David Brooks recently kind of gave here's my framework for how we get here. And I feel like this is where we'll end this today, but this is where you can chew on it. He gives kind of 7 for modern. In today, if we were to have some level of moral education, if we were to begin to change the cycle of meanness and begin to make our kids, the next generation, ourselves, everybody, care more about who we are inside rather than who will be in a workplace, what money will make, he gives this is what he says. We need a modern vision first. We need a modern vision of how to build character. How do we do that? All those old-fashioned models don't work for us and are hopelessly gendered. And so, what does that mean? Those formulas were obsolete. But the best modern approach to building character is believing that nothing in life is of any value except the attempt to be virtuous. Nothing in life. What would it be like if we began to teach that? Have you heard that anywhere? Has anybody been teaching you that any time? I mean, can we all say we have not? I've never heard that. I didn't even hear it in seminary. That the meaning of life, nothing in life is of value except the attempt to be virtuous. The next, number 2, we need some kind of mandatory social skills courses. I don't know what that looks like, but somebody's got to offer it somewhere. And what I mean by, because we've written off people without social skills as if it's a personality thing, when you haven't taught them how to do it. It's not a personality thing, it's a lack of training. Answering basic questions like, how do I attend to people? Do I attend to you well? Do you feel heard by me? Do you feel seen by me? How do I patiently cultivate a friendship? How do I sit with someone who's grieving or depressed, because we're all going to do it one day? How do I be a good conversationalist or a good listener? All those things, we don't have anything that trains us in that. Number 3, we need kind of a new core curriculum for how we exist in this world. Many of these courses, give like a ready-made formula, and a lot of that's come out of religious traditions too, Buddhism and Judeo-Christianity and Enlightenment rationalism. It's all given us like, here's a way to be moral. This is our way to be moral, and then there's another way to be moral, but we need like a core curriculum across the masses, across people, across all of these traditions. What is the ruling passion of our soul? Maybe it's something that answers that question. Whom are we responsible to in this world? I would say I would love for it to be, but that would just be me as somebody trained in the Judeo-Christian community. I'd love for it to be love your neighbor as yourself, right? Love God, love your neighbor as yourself. I give you the greatest of these, love your neighbor as yourself. I mean, we've been given that core curriculum, but that means nothing in a world where that's not everyone's curriculum. Number 4, intergenerational service. There should be periods in our life where we have to serve the youngest among us, every single one of us. There should be periods in our life where we have to serve the oldest among us, every single one of us. If there was a mutual care for both. Number 5, moral organizations. We need more of them, meaning that the church has this beautiful place in the world, David Brooks would say, who was not a Christian for a long time, writing as a moral theologian. It has a beautiful place. Can we be a place where we can offer this kind of teaching? And then 6, it was 6, not 7, I think I said 7, 6. Politics must return to the whole goal of politics being its moral enterprise. Politics has to become moral enterprise in the world. We should only see the lens of politics through that question of, is there anything in this life at all important before or other than virtue?